Two of us are.
Couple of you are. All right. Let's see. So this morning, Guy Rapondo. Our invocation pledge, four-way test.
Lead our prayer here. Pray with me. We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. We appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen. Stand and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it
fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, Sergeant at Arms report. We have guests and visitors.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm new at this job, so please forgive me if I don't get this right, but I'm going to try my best. We have 3 visiting Rotarians. Carl Ashby from the Greensboro Club. Mike Troxler from the Guilford Club. And George Arnold from Crescent. Dan Quinn has some guests.
I'll introduce them. Yes, did I? This is Jody and Drew from Strategic Technology Services. They provide all of our IT support at Netcom. I believe they also do this for Cheryl David and Mike Andrus. That's correct. Please make them feel welcome.
And Erica Parker has a guest this morning.
I'm happy to introduce you to Carmen Allen. Carmen is actually the branch manager for PNC right here in the Friendly area. I crash over at her place every now and then. So I'm delighted she can join us this morning for breakfast.
Well, warm welcome to all our visiting Rotarians and our guests this morning. Birthdays and anniversaries, it's a really, really slow week. There are actually no birthdays going on or wedding anniversaries, but Mike Allen is celebrating his 21st year as a Rotarian. Oh, wow. So congratulations. Yeah, sitting with the sponsor today. That's great. Great. So announcements. So Erica, you want to talk about the Page Scholarship and I guess your travels?
Sure. So Page Scholarship, today I will be hearing from the counselor with the applications, and I'll need a little help reviewing it. This year is a little different because I ran into the last minute. I've been traveling and I forgot to organize this. So at this moment, we're not going to be able to do face-to-face interviews. So I really need your help with reviewing the applications because we're going to have to, we're just going to have to figure it out from just looking at the applications. We may have an opportunity to do telephone conference with the finalists. So he's anticipating we'll have anywhere from 10 to 12 applications to review. And I'll be able to get those out to you guys tomorrow. So I'll send an email to see who all is interested in helping me review those. And then I figure we could work on those over the weekend and then kind of get back to them by Monday. Okay? And as I mentioned, I've been traveling, so I have a flag here from Singapore. I got to go to visit the Singapore chapter. It was an awesome experience. Singapore is very westernized, so it wasn't even, it felt like I was in New York, actually, except it was just clean and pretty, and it smelled good, and all those things. But it was amazing going to the meeting there. The food was delicious. They had me try different things that they felt like were really important for me to try, and they tasted pretty good. One dish I tried, I can't remember what it's called, but it kind of tastes like porridge, you know? It's these little balls of like oatmeal, I guess, and it's brown sugar and milk in it. It was really tasty. The meeting, they're really laid back. You know, they started a little late. The president got there probably towards the end. They were giving me a mug initially because they couldn't find the actual banners or whatever. So finally, when the president got there, she was like, "Oh no, we have a banner for you." So I was really excited about that. The group there is very international. I mean, there are people from all over the world that were part of that chapter. And the speaker for that day was actually one of the members, and he talked about a safari he went on in Africa. So it was really interesting, good, a nice experience. I love, I talked about joining Rotary initially because I hadn't lived here so long, and I wanted to have some friends, and you guys have been great about giving me stuff to do all the time. I now have friends in Singapore who want to put me to work too. So it's awesome experience. So I give this to you.
Well, you can actually keep it. But
Oh, the club doesn't get to keep it?
yeah, we want us to keep it. Yeah, that's fine. When I brought one back from Singapore, you all agreed to keep it. Let's see, Ralph, you want to say anything about?
Yes, changing of the guard, June 18th, 6 o'clock. It is up on Sign Up Genie now.
Good.
Yeah, good job. I signed up myself. Anybody signed up? Show of hands. Okay. So next week, let's see, half the room or most of the room signed up. So it's going to be a great event. Again, it's no charge to you and your spouse. So it's right across the street at a proximity, so it's going to be a great event.
See, I have some Rotary Foundation goodies, so I think only Kelly is here. So Kelly, you apparently donate your wife's name. So Mrs. Kelly Harrell has now received her Paul Harris +2.
All right.
Where is she?
Thank you.
And let's see, I can throw some membership update for people. So Marley has resigned from the club. Having two little ones is too much for her at this point, so hopefully she'll come back. Brian Kaiser also with his son, he'd taken a leave and he's just not able to come back. Bonnie Bastow has, moved to Charlotte, has found a new club there, so she's no longer with us. And then some for attendance reasons, Don Towery and Darren Carino are no longer with us. So, but we are still a vibrant club with great new members, and we look forward to many more years of being a great Rotary club. So, but certainly reach out to Marley. She was hoping she could make it last week, and I've told her to come by anytime and visit. We'd love to see her and be able to talk to her. So hopefully some morning she'll make it. So, any other announcements? All right, happy dollars.
Happy dollars, all right. Anybody at this table have a happy dollar? I'm away from this table.
I got one.
All right, so you guys know that I've been working with the board to open the school for children with autism, and shook hands with Our Lady of Grace yesterday to run a school within a school at their facility for the first year, which is huge. We're going to be able to use their infrastructure, and it's great. So it's go time for August opening. We're going to start with 5th through 10th.
Wow. What does it have a name? I mean, what do you call it?
Lionheart Academy of the Triad.
I have two. Last Saturday, my daughter took the NCLEX exam, which is the National Nursing License exam, and I'm proud to say she passed with a minimum number of questions. And then in 2 weeks, she'll take a commission as an ensign in the United States Navy.
Anybody over here have a happy dollar? I'll work later.
Just to remind you, the annual Fresh Market Sidewalk Sale is this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Great hot dogs, root beer floats. All the proceeds go to JDRF. So take the kids out. They'll love it. And it's at each one of the locations.
This happy dollar's for a guy most people don't know. His name's Rodney Carroll. He passed away unexpectedly earlier this year, and I've been trying to think of a way to give him a happy dollar.
And I went fishing Memorial Day weekend in a place that he discovered, and we call it the Drum Hole, and it's near Figure 8 Island. I'd have to kill you if I told you where it is, but we had an incredible day, some 30-inch redfish in there. My daughter went out for the first time in years. I used to take her when she was little, and she complained the whole way out there, my hands hurt, oh Dad, I'm ready to go in, but coming back, she didn't say a word. So we had a really good day. He started Military Appreciation Day down in the coastal area and did fishing for veterans, sort of like what Chip does, the shooting thing for him. Great guy, died unexpectedly, and we remembered him well this weekend. So a good fellow.
Well, Grandpappy Lewis was sitting on the couch, and he had him a pizza and some beer. And Grandma said, you know, it's just a shame that you're not into fitness. He said, what are you talking about? I'm into fitness, like fitting this whole pizza in my mouth.
All right, so we have Dan who will introduce our guest this morning, but Tom and I were at breakfast, got to hear a bit about the story of how he wrote this book, which I agree with Tom is probably just as fascinating as the story we'll hear this morning. But yeah, I'm looking forward to a really good program.
I just want to wear the hat. I've been looking forward to this. Mark Mortensen is a native of Carlisle, Massachusetts, and attended Sunday school as a child directly across from the Lexington Green, where the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. Mark's a graduate of Massachusetts at Amherst. His career in textiles for the past 15 years as a sales executive for Texturing Services, Inc. Mark's paternal grandfather immigrated to the U.S. from Denmark and served as a U.S. Marine Corps sharpshooter during World War I. His book, George W. Hamilton, U.S. Marine Corps, America's Greatest World War I Hero, has been used as a textbook at Elon. He is a member of the World War I Historical Association and a former assistant scoutmaster. He and his wife, Laura Tillman, a Greensboro native, reside in Summerfield and have 2 sons, and the rest is yours. We are looking forward to it. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, I've got my grandfather's helmet there, if anybody wants to look at it anyways. In the very front is where the Marine Corps emblem went, but I'll get started here. Let's see. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates once said that the First World War is not well understood or remembered in the United States. Hollywood has not turned its gaze in this direction for decades, yet few events have markedly shaped the world we live in. And it's correct, not many people care about World War I. It's kind of sandwiched around World War II and the Civil War, but World War I was quite a turning point, especially in America. It was the first global war. And I was honored to be able to meet Secretary Gates when he came to Greensboro and spoke at the Coliseum about a year ago, and give him a copy of my book too. But this is Hamilton. I do consider him America's greatest World War I hero, and I'll explain a little bit about his background. That's the book I wrote. It's in the Greensboro Library if anybody wants it. Some may say, well, wait a minute now, Hamilton's the greatest American hero. What about Sergeant York? And there's no question Sergeant York was an amazing World War I hero. Unbelievable feats and just a great hero. Others may say, this fella here, I've read his autobiography, his biography, and several other books. Eddie Rickenbacker, he was an amazing hero in World War I too, the ace of aces. Others may say, well, gee, what about General Pershing on the right-hand side or General Lejeune on the left-hand side? They were both great heroes too, and there's no question they were also great heroes of World War I. But it goes back to my grandfather, who served in World War I. I took this photo back in 1970 when he was 80 years old.
celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary. And he never would talk about the war. He lived another 10 years, died close to age 90, but he just wouldn't discuss the war. That's my grandfather there with the helmet that's being passed around. The hole in the top is where the Marine Corps emblem went. There we go. I researched Hamilton. In researching my grandfather's past, I came across Hamilton, who was my grandfather's battalion commander. He was the battalion commander of 1-5 when my grandfather entered as a replacement in World War I. And at Bellawood, Hamilton was a captain. I mean, some of you may have heard of Bellawood, but on the very first day of the Battle of Bellawood, Hamilton was recommended for the Medal of Honor. And he was turned down. He didn't receive the Medal of Honor because in World War I, Pershing didn't want the Marines to fight in France. He just wanted the Army. He wanted the Marines to stay on a Navy ship and go fight on an island. But he was overruled by Secretary of War Newton Baker. And Baker said, well, we're going to have 1 brigade of Marines in World War I. But once the Marines left the shores of America, they were released from being under the Navy as the little brother of the Navy. And they were under the direction of the Army in Pershing. But any awards and medals had to be approved by the Army. And it's my belief that Pershing believed the Marines were getting too much credit, and not one Marine Corps officer received the Medal of Honor in World War I. But anyways, when I came up and did my research on Hamilton, my friend George Clark, he lives in upstate New York, north of Dartmouth. He's in his late 80s now. He's written about 24 books, and I consider him the top authority on World War I Marine Corps history. I told him he needed to write Hamilton's biography, and he turned to me and said, well, you've come up with all the information, you write the book yourself. And I never in my life thought I'd write a book. And my wife graduated from Chapel Hill School of Journalism, and I went to her and I said, do you think I can write a book? And she said, well, she said, give it a try, just use 2 reliable sources whenever you quote sources. And I said, well, that's easy enough. Same as I ended up. In searching Hamilton's past, I came across his father. His father was a unique individual too. Lo and behold, Hamilton graduated from high school in Washington, D.C., and he entered the Marine Corps through the state of New York. And when I tracked down his father, lo and behold, his father was Dean of the Congressional Press Corps. His father was born in England, came to America at a young teenage age, and settled in New York with his parents. Well, when he was in New York, his father started a paper route, and one of the fellows on his paper route was Grover Cleveland, who was an attorney in Buffalo, New York. Well, lo and behold, Hamilton later on got a newspaper. His father got into the newspaper business right outside of Buffalo, and the city of Buffalo said, would you mind going to Washington, D.C. and being our reporter back to Buffalo? And he said, fine. Well, Chester A. Arthur was president of the United States, and he was sworn into the Congress as a reporter to Congress. And he said Chester A. Arthur was the best-dressed president that he'd ever come across. But shortly after his father was a correspondent in Washington, D.C., here comes Grover Cleveland, who used to deliver papers to and even ran personal errands for Grover Cleveland. And now Cleveland's president of the United States, and his father's a reporter. So the doors to the White House were open to his father on all occasions. Don Ritchie, who's the U.S. Senate historian, when my book was coming out, I called up Don and I said, are you familiar with Charles Hamilton, George Hamilton's father? And he said, well, sure, I know Charles Hamilton, the Dean of the Congressional Press Corps. I've written about him briefly. And he said, why? And I said, well, I'm writing the biography of his son, George Hamilton. Consider him the greatest Marine Corps hero and the greatest American hero of World War I. And Don said, I was in the Marine Corps and I never heard of his son, George. So it's kind of a flip. I didn't know the father at first. And here's Don Ritchie, the U.S. Senate historian. He knew the father, but didn't know the connection to the son. Well, once I got further into my investigation of Hamilton, I tracked down one nephew. He had one elderly nephew living in California who who's passed away now. This is Roger Bernard, and Hamilton was his uncle. He had this letter stored up in his attic, and the very last paragraph, in 1941, rather in 1942, Hamilton's medals were donated to the Quantico Museum, and it says the above listed objects are received for the purpose of displaying them in the Marine Corps Museum and preserving them as mementos of the late George W. Hamilton, USMC, who, in the opinion of the undersigned, was the most outstanding Marine Corps hero in World War I. Well, that's a bold statement, and so I scanned that and sent it to the current curator of the Quantico Museum, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Sullivan, and he didn't know this existed. He said, I'd never seen that before, and he said, you'd found a pearl. And but by the way, in 2009, Leatherneck magazine listed the top 10 toughest Marines in history who've ever lived. And they didn't rank them 1 through 10, but lo and behold, Hamilton's listed as one of the top 10 toughest Marines in history. And I'm not a veteran, but for me to write his biography was a real honor. Like I say, Hamilton grew up in Washington, D.C. with his father being Dean of the Congressional Press Corps. And they had a summer home in New York up on the Finger Lakes. And this was their summer home. And that's why Hamilton entered the Marine Corps through the state of New York. Hamilton was captain of his football team for 3 years, his sophomore, junior, and senior year in Washington, D.C. And they won the D.C. City Championship all 3 years also. And I knew once my book was published, I'd come across some fresh information that wouldn't make it into the book. And lo and behold, after the book was published, I found out that when Hamilton was a sophomore, that's Hamilton in the middle with a C. I believe this is probably his sophomore picture when he was captain. And when he was a sophomore, there was a freshman that tried out for his football team and didn't make the team, and that was J. Edgar Hoover. Well, here are the boys heading off to war. They're over in France, and they haven't seen battle yet. And they're all kind of smiling, and they look like youth today, probably just kind of have a great attitude. This is some of the trucks they had at the time, and mode of transportation was just really evolving back in 1917 when America hit France. This is a village too. They're still, some of them are smiling, some of them are a little tense. This is the fields of Bellewood, and on June 6, 1918, that's really America's first big battle. The Germans were only about between 40 miles away from Paris, and they were coming back to retake Paris, and they had full confidence they could do it. The French were in retreat, and the Marines were moving to stop a gap and keep the Germans away from Paris. And there's one Marine Corps captain, Lloyd Williams, who was famous for his saying, when he arrived at the scene at Chateau Thierry, the French kept retreating, and they said, you need to back up, you need to get out of here. And Captain Williams said, retreat, hell, we just got here. Anyways, but Hamilton, it's coincidental, the first day of the Battle of Bellewood in 1918 was June 6th, and of course June 6th is also D-Day in Normandy in World War II, but his citation for June 6th at Bellewood was, Captain Hamilton showed exceptionally brilliant leadership. His company lost approximately 90% of all his officers and 50% of his company casualties. That's in one day. Captain Hamilton, his rare quality of leadership is apparent. He ran up and down his line under severe fire, leading men forward and against personal exposure. Captain Hamilton displayed the quality of extraordinary heroism which warrants the recommendation for him for the Medal of Honor. And the fellow who wrote the citation was was Neville, who was commanding the 5th Regiment at the time, and he became Commandant of the Marine Corps after General Lejeune. There's another picture there. I just can't imagine that devastation of my grandfather. And my mother's dad was in the Army in France, too, but I just can't imagine the fellows fighting in that situation. This here is a this here is a battle of Blanc-Mont. And my grandfather was at this battle, and by this time Hamilton was he was a battalion commander, the rank of major, and it was a really fortified area held by the Germans. They'd held it since 1914, and it was a real stronghold. And Hamilton was over about 1,000 men in his battalion. And after 3 days of fighting, his 1,000 men were down to 168. And that's documented in my book. And of the 168, my grandfather was one of the 168 that wasn't wounded or killed in that battle. And at the same time, this is in October 1918, at the same time, you've got the lost battalion, and the losses of the 1-5 in the Marine Corps at Blanc-Mont were greater than those of the lost battalion. And then this comes to this comes to the last night of the war. I'm moving along a little quick here. I can go back and answer a bunch of questions. The last night of the war, as you may know, the 11th day, the 11th hour, and the 11th month was when armistice took place. And on November 10th, the Marine Corps was supposed to cross the Meuse River and attack the Germans. Well, there were lots of rumblings that the armistice was going to take place on November 11th, and but you can't work off of rumors. You have to work off of orders. So the fellows thought that there may be an armistice on the 11th, but come the 10th, they couldn't let their guard down, and the orders were that evening they had to cross this river and go attack the Germans. And the Army Corps engineers set up pontoon bridges. They'd been working for several days to build them, and they set up 4 of them. 2 of them downstream were both blown up by the Germans. It was real foggy. The Germans really couldn't see the bridges going up, but there was so much artillery being fired that anything in its path was being blown up. So the 2 downstream were blown up, and the Marines downstream couldn't cross. The one next to this bridge was also blown up, but this bridge was still intact, and it's 3 feet wide. And so the Marines, around 10 o'clock on the eve of armistice, crossed single file. And of course, the Germans were on the other side with machine guns, and like I said, they couldn't necessarily see the bridge, but they were just firing everywhere. And the fellas say they'd hear a little sock noise and be the fella in front getting hit by a bullet and knocked into the river and such. And it appears there were about 30 Marines that died on the night before armistice, many of them crossing that bridge. And so Hamilton crossed the bridge, and my grandfather did too. And anyways, when they crossed, they kept on fighting and moving forward. And when armistice came at 11 o'clock, Hamilton and his men, my grandfather's company, my grandfather was a private, but the company that he was with was down to just two dozen men. And they were with Hamilton at the time, and it's documented in my book that they heard about armistice at 1:30 in the afternoon. Hamilton was the last American officer to hear that the war was over. It took so long. This bridge was eventually blown up, and it took so long for a courier to get across the river, and he had to have a handwritten notice be delivered to Hamilton, and he received the handwritten notice at 1:30 in the afternoon. Between 11 and 1:30, I don't think they were killing Germans, but he was holding his place far in advance. This is a famous picture here. This is Hamilton here in the middle. It's in the Navy archives, and it's called "The Last Night of the War" is the name of the painting. As a matter of fact, Jeff Shahara stuck it on the front cover of his novel titled "The Last Night of the War." And I don't think he realized, and maybe at the time the Navy or the Marine Corps didn't realize, that in fact is Hamilton in the middle. And so they took this actual painting of Hamilton and put it on a fictitious novel book. But anyways, in 1941, Hamilton's father, who was still Dean of the Congressional Press Corps, was quite elderly, and he gave he gave a copy of this artwork to FDR in 1941. There were rumblings of World War II coming about, and FDR in a reply letter said, "Thank you very much, dear Charlie," because he called Hamilton's father Charlie. "Dear Charlie, thank you very much for the copy of the historic painting, The Last Night of the War. As a father, you have every reason to be proud of the memory of such a son. I am delighted to have the photograph. I shall frame it and place it with a German machine gun, which was captured on the last day of the war." And that's the letter there of acknowledgement with Roosevelt's signature. And that letter was up in the nephew's attic too. This was shortly after Armistice. That was my grandfather's captain, the second from the right there. And lo and behold, his son is still alive, lives out in Seattle. He's in his 90s. And so I've met some really unique individuals that have a connection to World War I. Here they are heading back from the war. That's Lejeune and Neville. There they are parading in front of the White House. There the Marines again. This is the 5th Regiment. I can't imagine taking a picture like that today in front of Congress. I mean, that's just that's amazing. That's my grandfather when he came home from the war back to Massachusetts. Hamilton, after the war, he got out of the Marine Corps. He was disenchanted. Lejeune recommended him to be a lieutenant colonel, a field grade, but he was turned down for lieutenant colonel. And after the war was over, he lost his rank of major and reverted back to being a captain. And not having received the Medal of Honor, he had 3 occasions flying Mortensen in the last night of the war also, where he could have received the Medal of Honor, but having not received that, he decided to depart from the Marine Corps for about 9 months and went to New York. And then he re-entered the Marine Corps and got into aviation, went down to Pensacola and got his aviator's license. But in 1922, in the summer of 1922, as crazy as it sounds, the Marine Corps used to reenact the Battle of Gettysburg at Gettysburg, and they'd bring in tanks and airplanes and see how the Battle of Gettysburg would play out with modern equipment. And Hamilton, he was a squadron commander, and he took off from Quantico Air Base and flew up to Gettysburg. And as he was flying over Gettysburg, he signaled to his men that he was going to land. And for some reason or other, his biplane went into a tailspin. He crashed into the ground not too far from Pickett's Charge. And so there's Hamilton. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And it says Captain Naval Air Service killed at Gettysburg, which is kind of
It's going to confuse somebody someday.
Some people believe that.
Talking to the nephew, I was doing my own research, but the nephew substantiated it. Lo and behold, Captain Hamilton, George Hamilton, had 2 first cousins who were really distinguished. And I don't believe the Marine Corps or the Navy knew about this till my book came out too. But Hamilton's first cousin, his exact same age, was Carlton Wright. Carlton Wright's on the very left there. And he was captain of the USS Augusta when Roosevelt met Churchill to agree to the Atlantic Charter. Hamilton's first cousin was in command of the USS Augusta. Carlton Wright's younger brother, Hamilton's other first cousin during the Korean War. He graduated, both of them, both first cousins, Carlton Wright and George Wright, became vice admirals in the U.S. Navy. And George Wright, during the Korean War, was commander of the Mighty Mo, the USS Missouri. When my book came out, lo and behold, this fella here, Ed Nelson, you're all too young to know Ed Nelson really, but he was an actor, he was still a voting member of the Academy Awards, and he was a screenwriter. He was probably most famous, he was Dr. Michael Rossi in the TV series Peyton Place that used to be on TV. But he moved from Hollywood and Louisiana back to live with his daughter and son-in-law in Oak Ridge. And he and his lovely wife Patsy came over to our house several times, and he wanted to write the screenwriting and have he read my book and said absolutely it has to be made into a Hollywood movie, and he wanted to do the writing and everything, but for one reason or another I won't get into, I decided not to go forward with it. He passed away last year.
He spoke here, 10 years ago? No, not like 5. Was it that?
And then through my book, I've met other nice fellas. This fella here is my good buddy. He passed away right around this time in May last year. 97 years old, Colonel Scales. And at Iwo Jima, there were 24 Marine Corps battalion commanders, and he was one of the 24, and he was the last of the 24 to die. And like I say, he died last year, but his mind was perfect. He was a 1934 graduate of Stoneville High School and 1940 Chapel Hill, and lived up in Martinsville, and I used to visit him. We had a cocktail, had a vodka tonic together last year, and last year during D-Day, at Iwo Jima, which is February 19th. I was his only visitor and just sat for about 3 hours, and he was just talking about D-Day at Iwo Jima. So that's basically that anyways. If you have any questions or anything,
How many casualties were there on the American side in World War I?
to be honest, it's in my book, and I can't recall what it was, to be honest with you. The overall in World War I, there were about 16.5 million overall, but of the 16.5 million, almost half were civilians, if you believe that. I know in today's technology, if a civilian gets killed on a battlefield or nearby, there's a price to pay, and how did the civilian die? But back in World War I, if you were in the path of war and you were a civilian, it was tough luck. And also, 100 years ago, back in 1915, is when the supposed genocide of the Armenians with the Ottoman Empire took place, and there were about 1 million Armenians that were supposedly killed too. So as we approach the 100th anniversary of World War I, get into 2017, 2018, I believe they're going to recommend Hamilton pair him up with one other individual, an aviator, I believe, and go for a third attempt to recommend him for the Medal of Honor. When World War I was over, Hamilton's father went to General Lejeune, who was Commandant of the Marine Corps, and asked him to see if he could get the Medal of Honor bestowed to Hamilton after his death. But even though the war was over, the medals still had to go through the Army and get the Army's permission for him to receive the medal, and he was turned down a second time. Okay.
All right, well, thank you very, very much for that informative, and everyone got a chance to sit home and get to wear it.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Let's see, so raffle. Yep. If we could get you to pull our winning ticket here today. Yeah, we'll say 806.
Yo, Daddy.
6. All right, well, everyone have a wonderful day.